Hey guys, welcome to this video. In this video, we will look at how to install LAMP stack on Ubuntu 24.04 LTS. Before I proceed, I would like to express my gratitude for your continued support towards my channel. My name is James and I focus primarily on posting Linux content and more specifically how-to tutorials in Linux. So in case you're new here, please consider dropping a like and subscribing to my channel, as this will go a long way towards helping me create better content. Alright, so for my setup, I have a VPS deployed. Now, in addition to this, I also have a registered domain called Crazy Tech Geek that is pointing to the public IP address of my VPS. So this will come in handy, especially when creating a virtual host for my domain. So in case your goal is to also create a virtual host for your domain, I would highly encourage you to have a registered domain that is also pointing to the public IP address of your VPS. All right, so that aside, let's get started. So what is LAMP? LAMP is an acronym for Linux, Apache, MySQL or MariaDB, and PHP. So Apache is the web server in this tech stack. Then for the database, you have an option of installing either MySQL or MariaDB. So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to install MySQL. And finally, we have PHP, which is a server-side scripting language that is mostly used in web development. So I'm going to demonstrate how we are going to install each of these elements one by one. So to start off, we are going to install the Apache Web Server, and Ubuntu repositories have the Apache package hosted by default, and we are going to use the apt package manager to install Apache. So first, what you need to do, you need to update the local package index by running the command sudo apt update and hit enter. So this is going to update the list of software versions in the sources list. Okay, so this should take just a few seconds to complete, so just be a little patient. All right, and there we go. So I'm going to clear the screen. Now, as we said earlier, the Ubuntu repositories provide the Apache 2 package, and to install Apache, simply run the command sudo apt install Apache 2, then hit enter. So here you get some information about the packages to be installed and the dependencies. So to proceed, just type Y on your keyboard and hit enter. So as you can see, the installation is underway and you can see the progress bar down on your terminal. All right. And there you go. Apache Web Server has successfully been installed. Now to check the version of Apache installed, you can run the command apache 2-v in lowercase. And as you can see now, we have Apache 2.4.52 installed. Now by default, Apache starts upon installation, and to check the status, you can run the command sudo systemctl status Apache 2, hit enter, and as you can see, the Apache HTTP server is up and running. One more thing you might consider doing is to enable Apache to start upon system reboot or a system restart, and to do so, you can enable the Apache service by running sudo systemctl enable Apache 2. So this ensures that every time you reboot or power on your system, the web server will run automatically. All right. Now let's test whether Apache is running. So I'm going to send a HTTP request to the web server using the curl command line 2 with the -i uppercase. Then I'm going to provide my IP address. So since I'm running on the same machine, I'm just going to specify localhost and hit enter. All right, so here you can see we get a HTTP 200 code, which means we have successfully sent the request, and you can see we have gotten a reply here. Okay, all right. So similarly, you can just provide the server's IP address. So in this case, my VPS IP address is 82.32 192.248.14, and I'm going to hit enter. So just like we saw earlier, we get the same reply. All right. So similarly, you can also do this from our web browser. So we are going to browse our server's IP on our browser and see what we get. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy my server's IP address. So this is the public IP. Then I'm going to head over to my browser and paste it here and hit enter. So this is going to display the Apache Web Server's default web page, and here you go. So you can see now Apache is configured, and we can see this is the default web page. All right. Okay, so now let's head back to our terminal. All right. So let me cancel this out and clear the screen. So just in case you're running a UFW firewall, all right, by default, if you're running this, port 80 will be blocked. Okay, so to do this, so to access the web server from a browser, you need to allow port 80. So in our case, UFW is not yet enabled. Okay, so to allow port 80, what you need to do is to run the command sudo UFW allow port 80, like that, then /TCP and hit enter. Okay, now since we are accessing the server via SSH, I'm also going to allow port 22 across the firewall. So port 22/TCP. So this ensures that we are not going to be logged out once we enable the firewall. All right. Okay. So now what you need to do is to reload the firewall. So you can do so by running sudo UFW reload. So as you can see, the firewall is not yet enabled. So to enable the firewall, simply run the command sudo UFW enable. Okay, so here you're going to get a warning that the existing SSH connections are likely to be disrupted. So to proceed with the operation, type Y. So I already have made two rules to allow port 80 and to allow the SSH port, default port, which is port 22. So here I'm just going to type Y and hit enter. And as you can see, now the firewall is active and enabled on system startup. So to check the firewall status, simply run the command sudo UFW status, like that. So you can see we have both port 80, which is the HTTP port, and port 22 for the SSH allowed in the IPv4 and IPv6 protocols. So both IPv4 and IPv6 protocols for port 80 and port 22 have been allowed. And now let's go back to our browser and reload. So as you can see, we are still able to access our default web server page because we have allowed port 80 across the UFW firewall. All right. Okay, so now our next component to install will be the MySQL database server. All right, so see you in the next step. All right, now in this step, we are going to install the MySQL database server. All right, and as you all know, MySQL is a popular and powerful database server that is mostly used in web development, and it's used by popular web applications including Twitter, Netflix, Facebook, and Airbnb, to mention just a few. Now, just like Apache, MySQL is hosted on the default Ubuntu repositories, okay? And we can easily install it using the apt package manager. So on your terminal, all you need to do is to run the command sudo apt install MySQL -server, all right, and hit enter. Okay, so once again, you'll get a list of all the packages and dependencies that will be installed. So to continue, press Y on your keyboard and hit enter. Okay, so as you can see, the installation for MySQL is underway, and just give it a few seconds and the installation will be complete. Okay, we are done with the installation of MySQL database server. So let me clear the screen. So like Apache Web Server, MySQL database server automatically starts upon installation, and we can confirm this by running the command sudo systemctl status MySQL, then hit enter, and as you can see, we have MySQL up and running. Now MySQL descends on port 3304, okay, and you can confirm this by running the ss command like that, then with the -pnltu options. Okay, so I'm gonna hit enter. All right, so on your screen here you can see that we have an entry. Okay, so we have an entry for port 3306 listening on localhost or loopback address 127.0.0.1. all right, so this is sure confirmation that the MySQL database server is running. Okay, so here is the port 80 for the Apache Web Server. All right, now let me clear the screen. So once we have installed MySQL, the next step is to secure MySQL using the MySQL secure installation script. Now, as you all know, MySQL is inherently insecure and is not protected by any password, okay? And that's why we are taking this extra step to secure it, okay? So just to demonstrate, you can easily access the shell by running the command sudo MySQL, hit enter. So as you can see, we have very easily access the shell, and we can run pretty much any command we want. So for example, we can check the existing databases using the show databases query. Okay, so we can literally do anything we want at this point, and this is not safe at all, especially if you're working on a production environment. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna exit the shell for now. Okay, also you can run the command sudo MySQL -u root -p. So this will allow you to access the shell as the MySQL root user without using any password. So as you can see, we are being prompted for a password. So if I just hit enter without providing any password, I still access the shell. Okay, so now I'm just gonna exit like before. So our mission now is to put in place safety measures for MySQL, including authentication. So to do so, what you need to do, we are going to run the MySQL secure installation script, as you can see. So this is a script that will implement the default measures for MySQL. So I'm going to hit enter. So here you can see our first step is to validate our first step is to put in place security measures for the password strength. So here you can see validate password component, which can be used to test passwords and improve security. So it checks the strength of the password and allows the users to set only the passwords which are secure enough. So here we are going to enable the validate password component by typing Y and hitting enter. So here you can see there are 3 levels of password validation policy. So here we are going to go with the strongest. So on your terminal, just type 2. So this will allow you to set the strong password policy, which is a mixture of numeric, mixed case, and special characters. Okay, so I'm gonna hit enter. All right, so the following prompts will allow you to further configure MySQL to the best recommended settings. So the first one will allow you to remove anonymous users. Okay, so anonymous users by default, the installation has an anonymous user, and this is only for testing purposes. So it's highly recommended to remove this before moving to a production environment. So we'll press Y and hit enter. So in the next step, we will disallow root login remotely. Okay, so by default, it's recommended that we should remove remote root login so as to avoid brute force attacks. So I'm just going to hit Y and press enter. Okay. By default, MySQL comes with the database named test, and it's recommended that you also remove this. So I'm just going to type Y once again and hit enter. Now to save the changes made, we're going to reload the privilege tables, and I'm going to do so by typing Y and hitting enter. Okay, so at this point we have enabled the basic security measures for our MySQL database server. However, we still have to enable password authentication. So I'm just going to clear the screen. So at this point, we still haven't enabled any kind of authentication. And just to confirm this, I'm simply going to run this command once more, hit enter. And as you can see, we still are able to access the MySQL shell without a password. Okay. So now to allow password authentication, I'm simply going to log back in like I did before without any password. Then we are going to enable a root user and specify the password for the root user. So to do so, I'm going to run this query. And by the way, this works for MySQL version 8.0 going onwards. Okay, so here you can see I'm running MySQL server version 8.0.39. Okay, and you can also confirm this by running this query. We are going to run the command select version, then open and close parentheses, then semicolon, hit enter. So as you can see, we are running MySQL version 8.0.39. Okay, so now we're going to enable authentication. So alter user, then I'm going to specify root at localhost. Okay, then identified with, then I'm going to specify the encryption method here. So caching underscore SHA-2 underscore password, then by. So here you need to specify your preferred password. So for the purposes of this video, I'm simply going to provide a very simple and common password. So password 321. Obviously you need to specify a better password than this because this one can easily be cracked. Okay, then I'm going to terminate this query with a semicolon. Okay, so this query will create a root user and also define a password for the user. Then I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so at this point we have enabled the root user and password authentication for our MySQL database server. So we are going to try this out. So here I'm going to exit from the shell. Okay, so now if you try to log in without a password, this is what you get. So as you can see, access has been denied. Okay, so now let's try to log in as root. So we are going to specify -new root -p, hit enter. If you hit enter again, you can see we are required to log in with a password. So this time around, I'm going to log in with the password I specified, which is password 321, hit enter, and there we go. So this is sure confirmation that we have secured our database server with the password and also other standard measures. So to exit, I'm just going to type exit and hit enter. All right, guys, so in this step, we have successfully installed MySQL database server. We have also implemented the basic security measures, also including password authentication. All right. Now in our next step, we are going to install the PHP server-side scripting language. So see you in the next step. The last component of LampStack is PHP. All right. So at this moment, the current stable version of PHP is PHP 8.3, and we're going to install this from the OndreJ PPA, which is a PPA that provides the latest versions of PPA. All right, so to get along with this, you need to run the following command. So first, we are going to add this PPA to our system. So you're going to run the command sudo add -apt -repository, then PPA :, then I'm going to specify j /php. Okay, then I'm gonna hit enter. So when you hit enter, you're going to see all the information concerning this PPA. All right, so here you can see everything you need to know about this PPA, including the homepage for this PPA. Okay, so now to continue, we need to press enter. Okay, so this will add the PPA to your system and also update the local package index so that we can now start using the PPA. And as you can see, we are done with this. So I'm gonna clear the screen. Now to install PHP 8.3, you're going to run the command sudo apt install PHP 8.3 like that, then hit enter. Okay, so you can see the additional packages that will be installed. So this includes some of the basic PHP extensions. So this will also install PHP Common, PHP CLI, PHP Opcache, and others. Okay, so to proceed, once again, type Y and hit enter. So this will install PHP and a couple of PHP extensions by default. So just give it a few seconds. And there we go. We have successfully installed PHP. Let me clear the screen and check the PHP version. And to do so, simply type PHP -v. And you can see we have successfully installed PHP 8.3.11. Okay, so now depending on what your project needs, you might require to install a few PHP extensions to add additional features and capabilities. Okay, so just for demonstration, I'm going to install a few PHP extensions. Okay, so we're going to install PHP 8.3 -MySQL, then PHP 8.3. I'm going to explain exactly what these extensions are, so don't worry. PHP 8.3, let's say GD, and lastly PHP 8.3 -zip. Okay, so PHP MySQL, this is an extension that allows PHP to communicate and connect with MySQL databases. So PHP curl, this will enable you to send HTTP requests from PHP and also integrate with APIs. PHP GD, this one provides image processing capabilities, and PHP zip, this allows you to work with zip compressed files. Okay, so there are very many PHP extensions that you can install. So these are just a few of them. So just hit enter and press Y and hit enter to proceed with the installation. So PHP extensions typically extend the functionality of PHP, so you can install any extension you want depending on your server needs. Okay, and we are done. Okay, now we need to test PHP functionality. So we are going to create a simple PHP file and see whether we can access it from our browser. So to do this, we are going to use the Nano text editor, which comes by default with Ubuntu. So I'm going to create this file in the var www html. Then I'm going to create a file and let's call it sample.php. Okay, all right, so to start off with a PHP file, I'm going to start it off like this: PHP Okay, so here I'm going to create a simple file that displays PHP information on a web browser. Okay, then I'm going to close this like that. So those are just the few lines that you need to include in the sample PHP file. So I'm going to save the changes, then I'm going to exit. Okay, so now we are going to head back to our browser and see whether we can access PHP information. All right, so I'm gonna go back to our browser here and provide /sample.php and hit enter. And this is what you should get on your screen. So this provides the PHP information. Okay, so you can scroll all the way down, okay, and see more information regarding your web server environment. All right, okay, so we are back to our terminal. By default, or rather it is recommended to delete this file once you've created it, so that the attackers or any other unauthorized people do not get information about the PHP version you're running. So what you're going to do, we are going to delete this file using the rm-r command like that and press enter. Okay, so at this point we have successfully installed all the components of the LAMP stack, that is the Apache Web server, the MySQL database server, and PHP. So far, we have installed all the components of the LAMP stack. Now, this section is intended for those who prefer or would like to install or configure a virtual host for their domain. So, as you can see from our web browser, all we have is a default Apache web server page here. Okay, so here you can see this is my public IP address. And since I already have a registered domain pointing to the address, I can also just type it like that, hit enter, and as you can see, I'm still arriving at the same page. So a virtual host file allows you to create custom content for your own domain. And this is exactly what we are going to do in this section. All right, so let me get back to my terminal. So the first step is to create a directory structure for our domain, and we're going to create this in the web root directory. So on the command line, I'm going to use the mkdir command to create the directory, and with the -p option, I'm going to create it in the var www/crazytechgeek, like that. Okay, so this will be my directory for the domain. Then I'm gonna hit enter. Okay, now next you need to change the ownership of the directory and all of its contents to the user and group called www-data, and this ensures that the Apache Web server process has all the necessary ownership and permissions to access and serve the files within its directory. So I'm going to assign the ownership of the directory to the user and group called www-data. So I'm going to use the chown command with the -r option to apply the ownerships recursively. So here we have www-data for the user, www-data for the group. Then I'm going to specify the path to the directory, crazytechgeek, like that. Then I'm going to hit enter. Okay, now the next step, I'm going to create a simple web page which we are going to use to confirm that the virtual host file is working. So I'm going to create an index.html file inside the directory. So I'm going to use the nano text editor. Then I'm going to specify the full path to the directory that you have just created. Then I'm going to create a file called index.html, like that. Okay, so now I already have a simple file created here. So I'm just gonna copy this here and I'm gonna paste it to my text editor. Okay, so this, as you can see, is a simple HTML file. All right, and it displays the message success. crazytechgeek virtual host has successfully been set up. All right, then I'm gonna save this by pressing Ctrl-O and Ctrl-X to exit. the file. All right. Now the next step, I'm going to create an Apache virtual host file. So this will instruct the web server where to get the domain files. All right. So once again, I'm going to now create a file using the nanotext editor once again. Then I'm going to specify the path, which is etc Apache 2, then sites available, then crazytechgeek.conf, like that. Okay. Then here I'm going to press enter. All right. So I already had pasted these lines of code here. Okay. So as you can see, we have the server admin. So be sure to replace every instance of crazytechgeek with your registered domain name. All right. So for the server name, we have crazytechgeek. For the server alias, we have www.crazytechgeek.info. And for the document root, you can see we have var www crazytechgeek. All right. So ensure that your Apache virtual host file resembles what I have on the screen, and make sure that you replace every instance of crazytechgeek and crazytechgeek.info with your domain details. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to save here the changes, and I'm going to exit. Next, I'm going to configure the main Apache Web server file and add a directive. So to do so, I'm going to use the nano editor once again, and I'm going to specify the full path to the Apache configuration file, which is Apache 2, etc Apache 2, then Apache 2.conf. All right. Then I'm going to hit enter. Okay. So I'm going to just scroll down here, and then just below here, I'm just going to add a directive. Okay. So here we are going to have server name, a server name directive, like that. And then I'm going to specify the domain name. So in my case, it's crazytechgeek.info, like that. Okay. So ensure that you have specified the server name. Okay. So this will notify the Apache web server of the registered domain name that is configured to work with the virtual server, with the virtual host. Okay. So here I'm going to save here by pressing Ctrl O, then Ctrl X. Okay. Then once that's done, we are going to enable the virtual host configuration, and to do so, I'm going to use the command sudo a2 nsite, then crazytechgeek.info, like that. Or rather, I made a mistake here. So this is crazytechgeek, like that. All right. So be sure that whatever you have here is the directory name that we created in the first instance. All right. Now, once that's done, you need to disable the default virtual host configuration, and you can do so by running the command sudo a2 dsite. Okay, so this disables the default virtual host configuration file, which is 000-default.conf. Okay, this has been disabled. Okay, now for the changes to come into effect, we need to reload Apache 2. Okay, so we can do so by running the command sudo systemctl reload Apache 2. Okay, let's check the status of Apache. See, this is systemctl status Apache 2. So as you can see, Apache is running. Okay. All right. Now also, you might need to check whether the syntax is correct. You can do so by running sudo apache 2 ctl config test. And here you can see that our syntax is okay. All right. Okay, so now everything seems to have gone like we expected. Now, what you need to do, we need to go back to our browser and see whether we can access our virtual host file. Okay, so let me go back to the web browser here. As you can see, this is what we had initially. Now let me reload and see whether we can access the index.html page we created earlier. So I'm just going to reload this, and there we go. So as you can see, we have accessed our website file, okay, which is the index.html that we created. Okay, so I highly appreciate if you've come this far and if you've gotten more insights on how to install LampStack and how to set up your own virtual host file using your domain. So that's it, guys. Thank you for this lecture. In the next lecture, we are going to see how to configure Let's Encrypt SSL. All right. So keep tuned to this channel, and I'll be uploading the video in just a few days. So see you in the next video.